Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Depressed Eeyore, and this is Kingdom Death Monster. So one thing I'm usually not entirely sure about is whenever a character dies, their stuff usually gets returned to the settlement storage. But since the introduction fight you don't have a settlement yet, I don't know if that means it all goes away. So I'm just play safe, and I'm just going to assume the worst. I'm going to assume that I lost the cloth armor that Mima had. So the good news is, Mima died, which sucks, but she was the one that threw her founding stone. So, in all, we lost one person and one founding stone for that fight. Anyway, so at this point, we go through the settlement phase. The settlement phase has its own little board for it. It's like this entire thing here that each of the symbols represents various phases, and you go step by step until you do everything for it. For the most part, I already have it kind of set up here. I just have it listed here. It's a lot easier to keep up with. So first things first, you set up the settlement. That just represents, getting out the board and all that fun stuff. Don't have to worry about it because it's always set up. Next is the survivor's return. Heal all damage and remove all tokens, and apply any returning survivor effects. The only thing we really need to do is just remove the damage they've taken. Everything else is pretty irrelevant. Okay. Got a bunch of crazy people now. Alright, we gain Endeavors. We get 1 per returning survivor. So in this case, we only get 3, not 4. We can also name our settlement, but I'm not going to do that just yet. And next, draw a settlement event. Now there is a deck of 20 cards that you can draw for the settlement event, but for the first year, because this is now officially year 1, the first settlement event is hard-coded to be first day. The first day settlement event will help set up your settlement. It is the first event of any new campaign. Survivors wander, drawn to a blooming light in the distance. They find the serene comfort of a towering pile of lanterns and a small collection of scared people. On a deep instinctual level, they know this area is safe and they make it their home. Roll 1d10 to determine your starting population and record the result on the back of the settlement record sheet. Choose and record genders for unnamed survivors. You may name an unnamed survivor and create their survivor sheet at any time during the settlement phase. So, let's go ahead and roll 1d10. 8. That's actually a really good roll. We got the highest possible result. We get 10 unnamed survivors along with our returning survivors. So that gives us a total population of 13. So right off the bat, pull up our population here. This is just mostly to keep track of numbers, but let's go ahead and take care of that right now. Reimu, Renazuki, Rayask. So there you go. So 2 male, 1 female. This is just an easy way to keep track of my unnamed. And at this point, we get 10 of those. So I have to decide their gender at the very least. I don't have to name them, but I do need to decide the ratio for all of this. I do tend on using mostly females. Also, females tend to be at more at risk during childbirth and things like that. So I'll actually go a bit more heavy on that side. So we're actually going to go 10 and 8. 10 males, 8 females. And that'll give us a total population of 13. Alright. Also, since, like I said, I'm going to be naming them after Gensokyo characters, so there you go. So for the most part, I'm going to be using male as probably breeding stock. For the most part, male and female don't matter too much, but I do know of at least one event that does screw over males, as opposed to females. Alright. Anyway, that's been taken care of. So, next, that was our settlement event. Next, we update our death count. And this will, if this is your first death ever, it triggers a principle. So, first death is poor Mima. So this will actually trigger an event. So let's go ahead and pull that up. It's called Principal Death. As always, be careful about imagery and all that stuff. Maybe not be safe for work. Those people be eating each other. And yes, more stone faces. Okay, Principal Death. The group must decide what to do with their first survivor corpse. Choose one. You can either go first harvest or the first grave. Going the first harvest will make us cannibals. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean you're eating them, though it does imply from the picture. But it also just represents that you're using every part of the dead body to aid you in the future. Kind of like how you use every part of the animal type thing. And then first grave is you decide to bury them instead. And which one we pick will decide what principle we get, like I mentioned before. Also, it also affects what sort of event we get that we roll a d10 for. So I'm going to go ahead and show off the 2 principles that we get to choose from. It's under principles. One was cannibalize. Cannibalize will give us +1 to our survival limit, which will get us up to 2, and eventually 3. And whenever a survivor dies, you draw 1 basic resource and add it to the settlement storage. This can be pretty good in the early game, because this will get you additional resources that you can use to build things. Or you can use it in hopes that you get a resource that you didn't get during the hunt. The other is Graves. Graves doesn't give you any survival limit, but it ensures that all new survivors start with +1 understanding. Unfortunately, it does not include the ones that we just got. Whenever a survivor dies during the hunt or showdown phase, you get 2 endeavors, and whenever a survivor dies during the settlement phase, you gain 1 endeavor. So if we pick now, I always assume that when you pick this option, it applies to the death that just happened. So if I picked cannibalism, I would get 1 resource right here, right now, and for Graves, I would get 2 endeavors. So Graves is generally, it will get me a lot more actions, which is always good. And then cannibalism gets you essentially more resources. It also gets you more survival, which means more dodging. Both have their different playstyles. At least from the parts I've been watching of Hit Points Gaming, he at least went cannibalism for his first game. I usually go cannibalism. I just do always. But I think I'm gonna go Graves. I think the reason I went cannibalism usually was because a lot of the blog playthroughs and forum playthroughs that I was reading on, they seem to always pick Graves, and so I was like, I'll just pick cannibalism and just go different. But I've played this game enough times to be like, okay, I could really go for either or, and I think for this one I'm gonna go Graves. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that to the list. Can I pull it out? No, I can't. All right. Well, let me pull it up this way then. Boop. These are scanned in for myself, so. And yes, I own the board game. It's very expensive. This part of the reason why I made this Roll20 thing is so I can play this with my friends. Because I don't really have any friends nearby that I can play with. And this is a good game. I really like it. But we'll talk more about that later. So, we went ahead and grabbed Graves. And next, we're going to go ahead and do the rest of that event. So, we picked the first grave. The settlement decides to build a small monument to mark their loss. Notice it's stone faces. The settlement gains the death principle Graves. Find and place the card, blah, 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 blah. We did that. Alright, now we roll 1d10 and see what happens. 7. Nominate a survivor. With tears in their eyes, the survivor takes a shard of rock from the grave and marks themselves with it. They cherish this mark forever. The survivor gains +1 permanent luck. Okay, I'm going to nominate one of the unnamed females to get +1 permanent luck. I think that's pretty good. If we had gotten a low roll, it would have all of our departing survivors would get +1 survival and understanding, which is also good. If we had went with the first harvest, that roll would have gotten us +1 permanent speed, which is also really good. And then the low roll would have been we got a founding stone, and all our departing survivors would go insane. So there is that. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this random person that's gonna be female +1 luck. What luck does is it increases your crit range. So instead of critting on a 10, this character will crit on a 9 and a 10. And if she decides to use her fist, she can crit on an 8, 9, and 10, which is a 30% crit chance, which is not bad. Okay, with all that said and done, let's keep going. So that was our death principle taken care of. Oh, also, since we now have graves and someone died during the hunt phase, I do count that one. Because this event is because someone died and we wanted to figure out what to do with the body. And come to think of it, if I had the body, that means I would have the cloth. That's... Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say I have the cloth, because that makes sense. I did take the body back. Granted, this game doesn't exactly go on that sort of logic, but I'm gonna go ahead and say so. Usually, if you do have the settlement storage, you do get these items back. You don't suffer permanent losses unless it says otherwise. So, we get 2 endeavors, we're up to 5. Alright, that's awesome. That means we have 5 actions instead of 3. Alright, well, we need to keep going. There's still steps here we have to do. So that was death count, update timeline, trigger story event. So at this point, we would fill in the lantern year, so we're at year 1, and we look at the timeline. The timeline here has an event called Returning Survivors. So we pull up the story events here. These are in alphabetical order. Returning Survivors. Here's the image. If you recall from the first year event that we just did, it talked about being attracted by a huge beacon made up of a bunch of a giant stockpile of burning lanterns. And here it is. Returning Survivors. Nominate a survivor to utter the first words. The nominated survivor steps forward and gains +1 courage. They lead the other survivors to learn to speak to one another. They discuss their situation, realizing they must hunt to live. Add the white lion to the quarry list on the settlement record sheet. Your settlement gains the language innovation. Search the innovation cards for language and place it face up in your play area and record it on your settlement sheet. Language is your first innovation, and it will spark the creation of the innovation deck. Build it now. So at this point, I talked about this in the introduction. We got Bonya, Drums, Hovel, Inner Lantern, Paint, and Symposium. I've already made the deck. It's down there. And I've already put language there. What this does do is it does increase our survival limit. So we're now at 2. It also gives us access to Encourage, which I'll check those in as we go along. Alright, with that said and done, the glowing center, armed with language, the nominated survivor aptly names the glowing center of their home the Lantern Horde. The settlement gains the Lantern Horde settlement location. Blah, blah, blah. Get it, put it on the board. The nominated survivor sits in front of the Lantern Horde in awe and gains +1 understanding. They must skip the next hunt phase as they ponder the meaning of existence. Check off the skip hunt box on the survivor's record sheet. They cannot be selected as a departing survivor this phase. So for this, I want to go ahead and pick an unnamed female for this as well. So I'm not going to pick the one that has the +1 luck. That one we're actually going to take with us. So I'll pick a unnamed female here. I will name these characters, but I'm going to do that after we take care of all the phases. Or at least majority of the phases. So +1 courage, +1 understanding, skip hunt. There you go. And that's really all I need to note. Alright. Now one thing to note, I don't have a settlement sheet on here, but the settlement sheet, there's a section that's for the name, and underneath it, it says if you name your settlement, returning survivors will get 1 survival point. So that's what I'm going to do right here, right now. I'm going to go ahead and name our settlement. I'll give you one guess. Oops. There we go. Gensokyo. So naming that ensures that our returning survivors got 1 survival point. So there you go. And there you go. Mainly that was just to ensure that Rainbow gets 2 points. Okay. We did get a settlement location. This is the Lantern Horde. Now, the original Lantern Horde did not have this little extra part in the bottom, but the Lantern Horde did get updated, and so it is on the website, and I just scanned it. I downloaded the image and brought it to my Roll20. Anyway, Lantern Horde. As you can see, this is our primary state structure. It's made up of stone faces, and it has a bunch of lanterns in it. There are 4 things you can do here. You can spend an endeavor to build a bonesmith. All it takes is an endeavor. You can also spend an endeavor to get a skin worker and an organ grinder. These are all settlement locations. But the primary benefit of the Lantern Horde is you can once per settlement phase, so once per year, you can spend an endeavor, a bone, an organ, and a hide to innovate. In which case you draw 2 cards from the innovation deck and you keep 1. And that's essentially you get more technology. So that's definitely something we're going to be doing. But before we do any of that, let's see if we got any other states. Nope, we don't. Last step is to develop. So at this point, we can go ahead and start crafting stuff and doing our endeavors and all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and do that. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and spend 3 endeavors. Right here, right now. And just build those structures that were listed. So we're going to go ahead and get ourselves the Bonesmith. Like so. Skinnery. I'll expand these in a bit. And then the organ grinder. Okay. Zoom in a little bit so I can actually see. I mean, most of these are just to kind of visually show that we have the building. Other than that, it's not that big of a deal. Okay. I'll go a little bit more into what these do in a second. Generally, you want to get all 3 in the first year, unless you just absolutely don't need one of them. Which, the only reason that would happen is if you're very lopsided on resources. Okay. So, Bonesmith, Skinnery, Organ Grinder. Bonesmith uses bones to make weapons. Skinnery uses hide to make armor and some other utility things. And Organ Grinder uses organs for the most part to make various trinkets. So, let's go ahead and show off the Bonesmith. So, I can make a bone dagger, bone blade, bone axe, bone darts. Most of the bone weapons aren't that fantastic, and most of them have a trait called Frail, where they are easily broken if they hit certain hard locations. But they are better than a Shard of Stone, so there's that. You can also get a Skull Helmet, which you can either make with 2 bone or 1 skull. A Skull Helmet has really high defense for the head, but if an attack ever breaks through the armor of a Skull Helmet, it breaks the helmet permanently. And the final 2 items are gathering items, which we're not going to be able to do anything with until we get ammonia. And even if we get ammonia, we can't do anything until we get leather, which is a higher tier resource. One other thing we can do with the Bonesmith is we can spend an endeavor, 3 bone and a hide, to make a weapon crafter. So technically we can make a weapon crafter right here, right now, but we will be really low on resources from then on. We wouldn't really be able to do anything with the weapon crafter, is probably the more accurate thing to say. I can go ahead and pull that up real quick to see if we could even do anything with it. No. I don't think we can. Maybe that axe, actually. That'd be hilarious. Start with a freaking axe right off the bat. I have 4 bones. It's going to take 3 to make that. 3 to make the structure itself. Technically, I could start with a Zanbato. That would be hilarious. And really, really dangerous. Holy cow, that would be so dangerous to do. Oh wait, I have 5 bones. I could do it. I can start with an axe instead. But I mean, it'd be a really strong weapon. I'll say that much. But but one of the things I always try to make sure I do every year is innovate. But first, I'm gonna go ahead and I'll go ahead and show off the other locations real quick. Skinnery. You can make the Rawhide set, which is an armor set. Each of the pieces of armor provides 1 armor. Some of them also have additional benefits. You also see that they have colored tabs, which we'll go into later. Also, much like in Monster Hunter and other RPGs, if you have the full set of an armor, it will give you additional benefits. Usually, it'll give you extra armor as well as some sort of special ability. Bandages will reduce bleeding. One of the other ways you can die in this game is by losing too much blood from various attacks that cause bleed. Rawhide drum we can't do anything with until we know about drums, and we can't do rawhide whip until we know about ammonia. Also, we can spend an endeavor, spend some hide, some organs, and get the leather worker, which is essentially the next tier up. And then the organ grinder, pretty straightforward. Makes various unique items. There's fecal salve, which gives you survival points when you leave, and can be used to drop aggro. Monster grease helps with evasion. Lucky charm does nothing, but if you get those connections, it can give you additional luck. Acanthus is for plants, which we don't have yet, and then we can't do anything with the monster tooth necklace until we get heat. But one other thing you can do with the organ grinder is you can build a stone circle, which is just another tier of gear you can get. But the other thing you can get is you can spend endeavors to do auguries. When you do an augury, you'll roll a d10, and you'll either lose a resource and get +1 understanding, you can gain +1 survival, or you can get intimacy, which is a story event. Intimacy is what you need to is an event where you can breed and try to make more people. In this game, essentially, any babies you make essentially become adults very quickly. Time doesn't work the same way in this world as it does in other worlds, to say the least. There's a comic in the very back of the book, and there's like a girl running away from monsters, and she falls unconscious, and when she wakes up, she's an adult. So, wacky fun times. Anyway, so, yeah, that's it for the locations. So, we have 2 endeavors left. I'm going to use one of those endeavors right here, right now. I'm going to go ahead and innovate. So we have to use 1 organ, 1 hide, 1 bone. At this point, I need to draw 2 cards from the innovation deck. It has 6 cards. I go from left to right. So 2d6. 4 and 1, which I think is exactly what I rolled before. It is. So there is that, I guess. This is a pretty significant choice here, because getting ammonia right off the bat is pretty powerful. So let's go ahead and go over what we got. We have ammonia. It will get us access to ammonia consequences, which can get us access to things like the lantern oven, which provides heat. So I can do things like make that monster tooth necklace. Ammonia is also used for leather working. So to get actual that leather material we need for, like, you know, the sickle and the pickaxe, you have to have ammonia. In which case, and then you can use it. Yeah, it's pretty much that. You need ammonia for that. You definitely need ammonia for the next tier of gear, or actually, it skips an entire tier of gear, so it's pretty useful. Also, it has the added benefit of when you depart, you will get +1 survival. So any of your survivors that depart will get +1 survival, which will help them get started. Alright, the other option, though, is Inner Lantern. Inner Lantern gives everyone access to the Surge survival action. What Surge does is you spend a survival point to get an extra action, which can usually be an extra attack or something like that, which is amazing. It's really good. But it does get very expensive just popping survival points over and over again. I'm going to get ammonia. I think ammonia is a good thing to get. So we now have access to ammonia. This does give us 1 departing survival. So I'm going to update this. That keeps track of that a lot easier. Alright, with that said and done, I have to add to the deck Bloodletting and Lantern Oven. Put that there. And Lantern Oven. Lantern Oven's the big one. If we can get Lantern Oven early, that can really help us. But that's one of the neat things about this game is since the innovation deck is randomized, it really can influence how you start your play. The friends I'm playing with, we ended up getting hovels, and we ended up going down that tree completely, which meant we didn't really have much gear-wise in the start, but we had really good offspring. So every new survival we made had awesome stats. In this case, we're going to potentially be able to get ourselves a really good tech boost as far as like equipment is concerned rather soon. Alright, so at this point, I need to actually start crafting things because we need weapons. So, at this point, I could go do a review of like everything that's available, like the specifics of every weapon, but I'm not going to do that because that's going to take a while. What we're definitely going to go ahead and do is use the Shimmering Mane, turn it into 2 hide. And we're going to use that to go ahead and make ourselves a chest piece and a headband. So we'll just get the rawhide stuff. So we're going to get a rawhide vest, which I'm just going to put over here because it's definitely going to be equipped soon. Yeah. What this does is it gives you 1 armor to the chest, and there's a blue and red tab, which if those get connected by the appropriate colors, it will give you +1 evasion, which means you don't get hit as often. And then for the Rawhide Headband, if you get the blue tab connected, it will give you an additional ability where you can spend an action to look at the top 2 cards of the AI deck and put them back in any order. So this can get you really prepared for certain attacks. Or you can make sure you just put a really bad attack below the others over and over again. Alright, it also gives you 1 armor to the head, which is always good. Alright, with that said and done, let's keep going. So that was all of our hide. All we have left now are bones. I could make a skull helmet, but I really just kind of want to make weapons at this point. I'm going to make a Bone Darts. Bone Darts is your first ranged weapon that you're going to get in this game. The bad part about Bone Darts is, 1, it's frail, because they can break. But the other bad part is, it's not actually a weapon type, so you can't get proficient in Bone Darts. But it has reasonably good strength. They're not very accurate, and you can't attack much with them, but they are ranged and reasonably strong. Alright, so that's 1 bone. I will get rid of a Lion Claw. And then I'm going to go ahead for the other one, is I'll make a Bone Sword. Did I name it the wrong thing? Oh, sorry, it's called Bone Blade. Bone Blade, it's frail as well, which kind of sucks, but it has 2 speed, 6 accuracy, and 2 strength. So it's more accurate and stronger than a Founding Stone. I completely forgot I had Founding Stones, but I mean, I was really tempted to go for that Weapon Crafter. You don't even know how tempted I was to go for that Weapon Crafter. That would have been some awesome stuff, but it would have meant no innovation that year, and I can't really afford to not innovate. Alright, I'm going to get rid of a skull. And I'm going to hold on to this Great Cat Bone and Lion Claw. So with that, I have essentially 2 people will have weapons, and then the rest can get the Founding Stones and all that good stuff. Yeah, so that's an option, I guess. But I'll deal with equipping people in a bit. Right now, I have 1 more endeavor left, and what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to do an augury. And the person I'm going to have do the augury is our person that is right now going to be sitting out from the hunt and already has 1 understanding. So if I roll bad enough, that person will get another point of understanding, which is always good. So, 1d10, 5. Unfortunately, 5, all that does is give you +1 survival. So, she gets +1 survival. That's it. Alright. Well, that is all of our endeavors. That leaves us with 2 bones, a Great Cat Bone and a Lion Claw. I'm specifically keeping those because there is a weapon I can get with those that would be kind of nice to get at year 2. So yeah, there's that. So next, I have to decide who to send on a hunt. It's certainly not going to be Rayask or Renezuki. I will definitely take Reimu, because Reimu might as well go. What I'll probably do with Reimu is have her handle some of the bone shards. I'm going to have the person that has the most armor have the sword. It also will connect these red tabs. So yeah, like I mentioned before, there's these tabs. Connecting them will give you affinities. So every every red connection will give you a red affinity. Every blue connection gives you a blue affinity. Some pieces of gear will have affinity requirements. Some will have connection requirements. Connection requirements are represented with puzzle pieces. So in this case, if you connect the blue tab for this Rawhide Headband, you get this ability. And if for the Rawhide Vest, if you connect the blue connection and red connection, you get that stat increase. All right. Next, now for the other type. Let's see if I can pull it up. Gear. The most obvious one's the Organ Grinder, Lucky Charm. Now this one, you don't actually have to be connected to the Lucky Charm, but as long as you have 2 blue connections somewhere on your gear grid, you will get the benefit of the Lucky Charm, which is +1 luck. Okay, so that's why I have this connection here. Now, if you had the Rawhide Gloves, that can actually connect here just by itself, but a Bone Blade will have to do for now. Other than that, we do have the Bone Darts here. So that's going to go to somebody. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll probably have one character have a Founding Stone at least. For attacking, Rainbow will have 2, one for throwing and one for whatever. Rainbow cannot equip the chess piece because of her disorder. And yeah, so at this point I need to come up with 3 characters to send on this hunt, and that's pretty much it. So this, I'll go ahead and say this ends the settlement phase. When we come back, I'll have some characters prepared, and we will be going on a hunt. The very first hunt we have is the White Lion. We'll be doing the only thing we can hunt is a level 1 White Lion. Every time we kill a quarry, you can kill some. You'll get access to the same quarry at 1 level higher. So if we beat a level 1 White Lion, we'll get access to level 2 and so forth. Also, certain story events will trigger getting access to other quarry. So at this point we'll be finding, I keep saying this over and over again. We're going to be fighting a level 1 White Lion. It's going to be stronger than the one we just fought. It's going to have 10 AI cards, and it's going to have a toughness of 8. That toughness of 8 is going to be the tough part. Literally, because it's going to be a lot harder to harm these things. But we'll also have access to a few additional benefits that will hopefully keep us alive. So, with that said and done, I am The Depressed Hero, and this was Kingdom Death Monster. See you guys in a bit.